Hello, everybody, and welcome to Audio Games, the premier non-video based on a video platform podcast.
The non-video, video-platformed video game podcast. It just rolls off the tongue.
Exactly. Perfect. I'm one of the hosts, Neil.
And I am also one of the hosts, Matt.
Hi, Matt.
Hello.
It's been a hell of a first month somehow of the year already.
Yeah, we're recording this in February.
Yep.
Meaning that a month has already elapsed. Though thankfully, it's been a pretty slow month for gaming, if you ask me.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's been a pretty fast month for developers not having the continuation of their jorbs.
Wow. Yeah, gonna go straight into that,
I'm mixing it up, hitting news right off the bat. We gotta start bad so we can end high for once.
Just to peek behind the curtain a little, when we were talking about rebranding, one of the things that I brought up was like, a lot of our news is just downer news.
So true.
And then here we are, first proper episode of the new podcast, starting off with more layoffs. And I mean, hey, that's just the state of the industry, bro. Can't do nothing about that. But I don't know, I just thought maybe the first news piece ever on this new podcast could maybe not be about layoffs. And not to turn it into a comedic skit piece here, but man, what a state of affairs that we live in. And it's, you know what? It's across the board.
It is. It's not just video games.
No, I mean, it's video game adjacent shit, but in general, January is a horrible month for trying to remain employed, I guess, in this day and age. But let's see, what do we got? We got Unity.
Mm-hmm.
Unity cut people. Big layoffs at Unity. Deus Ex game canceled because Eidos Montreal. Eidos? Is it Eidos or Eidos?
I've always said Eidos. Eidos? Maybe Eidos.
I don't know. It's that company that make Deus Ex. Canceling their Deus Ex game as they lay off nearly 100 people. Twitch, 35% of its staff has been cut. Twitch, owned by Amazon, by the way, if you weren't already aware.
Mm-hmm.
They already also cut off their service in Korea. So They're really reeling back. But on the flip side, I heard that they had some new policies roll out that are actually very content creator forward.
They did do something with the ad revenue split in some fashion. Honestly, I am a Twitch streamer, as everyone knows, but I pay so little attention to that stuff because I get maybe 1 cent a year from ads. It's not something that affects me directly.
Well, I also heard that they changed the split based on subscriber numbers, and the model there is just a lot easier to hit certain thresholds.
Oh, that might be true.
I mean, I actually happened to be on Twitch as the CEO of Twitch was talking about this, and he was live streaming it on Twitch. So, I'll give him some credit for using his own platform. It's nice to see people who run the show using their own product. But, they were taking questions and talking about it, and it seemed like it actually was... There was a very good response from creators for that. But I think that a large part of why they're able to do that is because they're cutting humongous swaths of their staff. Mm. And I guess the money saved there's a bit of that's going to be going to content creators. So, I mean, I got some mixed feelings about that in general. Hey, Neil, what other layoffs are you aware of?
Oh, well, we talked last time very briefly about the Blizzard Activision getting absorbed by Microsoft finally closing.
Yeah, that did happen.
There was expected to be, when two very large companies combine, there will be some amount of redundancy that doesn't need to be there anymore. It is less frequent that 1,900 people are that redundancy. And frankly, a lot of people losing their jobs were people out of Blizzard, and developers, not just PR people and stuff like that.
Yeah.
A little bit of a shocker. They completely scrapped apparently a survival game that had been in the works for like 6 years, running off of the Overwatch engine, apparently.
Well, I mean, I can't really speak as any sort of professional decision maker in that sphere, but kind of a saturated market.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a survival guy. I wouldn't have touched it anyway, but still,
It's just it seems
yikes.
like every game is either a Stardew wannabe or a Minecraft wannabe. So I don't know.
Which side of that divide do you like? Are you more of a Minecrafter or more of a Stardewer? Stardewy?
I star don't
Oh,
and I mine do. That
okay.
didn't flow as well as I thought it would, but the start was really good. I mean, I have nothing against Stardew Valley. I think that like that game was a huge accomplishment for a concerned ape, and it, well deserved that there's so many copycats. It's just I don't know. Part of it is like you can tell that it was a passion project for the original developer, and like a lot of this clone stuff that happens after the fact is kind of a cash grab. But that's not new news, Neil.
Fair,
That's
fair.
not even really that relevant to the current gamosphere.
It's true. There's a new survival crafting. Uh, what the fuck is that
Let's
genre?
let's throw a question mark on that new.
Yeah.
Um, as
Okay.
as the one person of this two-person podcast who had bothered to play Palworld, let me tell you, refunded that game.
Oh, so quickly.
It it was one of I think two games now on my Steam list of games refunded. And you know what? This is probably a controversial opinion. A lot of people really like Palworld. Like there's a reason that it's gotten so popular, and I will attribute part of that to just the memetics of what Palworld is, right? It's edgy Pokemon with guns. That's a sentence in of itself enough to sell a game to like probably at least 50% of the people who own that game now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But my experience with Palworld is basically this. It's Ark. You know Ark, that dinosaur game?
Yeah,
Survival
you
Evolved?
punch a tree until you can make a wooden axe or something, and then dinosaurs eat you.
Yeah. So my problem with Ark is that it's not optimized. At least when I played it, my nice computer was struggling, and the main thing is like the draw is to play in a server with other people. I don't want to be playing one of these games alone. Like
Sure.
that's just a sad state of affairs when you're like, let me play in this like sandboxy world full of creatures and like have none of what I'm doing be meaningful to anyone but me.
Hmm.
And the problem with Ark is that when you drop into a server, chances are like you are the most depraved caveman possible, while everyone else is already like flying around on their end game mounts, shooting assault rifles at you, and it's just like, well, this isn't very fun for me. And that's basically the same problem I had with Palworld. I played on the official server number 54, which is to say they are trying to run a lot of servers for this game,
Hmm.
which, you would hope so because there's so many people who own it. But right from the get-go, it was like, hey, in order to advance your technology so you can access new tools, you need to set up a little base camp. And so I spent the next like 20 minutes trying to find a space to do so because you cannot set your base camp up near anybody else's. But with how full this game is right now, it's just like, oh, well, let me just cut out a small chunk of what free time I have to find a shitty location that no one else wanted, right?
Yeah.
So that was fun. And then I did that, and then basically from there on out, it was just a bunch of server drops and lag, and it was not nuanced gameplay. It was like you said, make an axe, hit a tree, collect the wood, build a thing, hit the rocka with your pickaxe.
Yeah, I have a few other friends that got a little more into it. They weren't doing the official servers, they were doing their like personal servers and seemed to be having a good time that way.
Sure.
Um, but it extremely looked like one of those, but the way that you kind of improve is go catch the legally distinct Pokemon so that they can collect the wood for you, and you don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain amount of automation that comes from the forced labor of cute creatures, certainly, but I never really got to that. And again, this was largely because playing on an official server, you're signing a contract as a new player to be resource starved. Okay, so you need to eat in this game, and one of the easiest ways to obtain food is to kill low-level pals.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, all of these players who are trying to trivialize the need for food are, like, going through and killing all of the pals before I can even catch one. I had one pal, I don't even remember what it was called. It wandered and followed me, and it didn't really fight or do anything. And by and large, it just felt like something that was tacked on to an otherwise run-of-the-mill survival game. So I'm sure that there's more nuance to that when you hit a certain threshold. My problem, or at least the problem that I see for this game as it tries to move forward, is the initial first part of the game is a slog and uninspired. And the people who got through that and were like really gung-ho into this game, I imagine that they're probably, at least by now, in the end game content. And then once you hit there and you have all this whole army of poke slaves to do all of your work for you, then like what is the appeal of logging in and elaborating on that? And my understanding is that at least where the game is at now, it doesn't have a lot of end game.
Yeah, that is definitely something I understood as well, though I got about it from a slightly different way. Nobody I know got to the end game, but everywhere seemed to flash in the pan. Palworld's the biggest thing for like a week, maybe two, and then it just dropped the fuck off the face of the earth, which to me says people got to the end and said, "Oh, there's nothing to do," and stopped playing.
Yeah. I mean, I can only make comment on the hour of gameplay that I had in my own personal experience. But all of that aside, there's this whole argument that had inflamed many a Twitter and Reddit threads of the legal precedence of Palworld in a world where Pokemon already exists, right? Yes. And, like, there's no question here. Like, the designs of some of these pals, these legally distinct Pokemon, as you called it, are total ripoffs, like, one-to-one.
Oh, wildly.
And some are like weird Frankensteins, where they rip certain aspects from one Pokemon and certain aspects from another, which, by the way, was already a thing on the internet. Literally, like, the Pokemon Fusion meme stuff, where they just squish two Pokemon together. And so the question here is, like, what has Nintendo done? What can Nintendo do? Like, what precedent is there for them to have any sort of legal leverage over Palworld? And my understanding, and again, I'm just an armchair law student over here, is that...
Wait, are you a law student? When did this happen?
An armchair law student, Neil, not a real law student.
Okay.
Like, when you say armchair, you're implying that you don't actually have any precedence in that field.
I would have thought when you say
armchair psychologist, you're not saying I'm a psychologist and I sit in an armchair.
No,
I'm saying that I'm not a real psychologist.
Like, you actually are reading some books or something on it. You're just not officially.
No, that's not what that means at all.
Okay, that's how I always understood it.
Armchair implies that this is just some asshole who's saying stuff, acting like he knows something, and that's me. And based on that information, my understanding is that Palworld was shown 2 years ago. That was when the initial trailer the announcement trailer dropped, okay? And immediately the response was Pokemon with guns. That has always been the discussion involving Palworld, is that, oh, look, it's edgy Pokemon with guns, it's Shadow the Hedgehog for Pokemon, and Nintendo didn't do anything. And then, they continued to develop it, and, they showed it more. Nintendo didn't do anything. And the game came out, and it's been a humongous success. And while enough prodding at Nintendo had gotten like a pseudo response from them, I don't know if they have a legal precedence to actually do anything about this now. And again, this is an international situation, and it's going to be different from place to place. But when you think of like how things work in the United States, and elasticity clause, which is to say, if you do something before a law is formed or a precedence is set, then you cannot be held guilty. And the lack of movement on Nintendo's part might have doomed them.
I saw it more as because Nintendo did shut a few things down. Like really quickly, there was hey,
well, yes,
let's turn these things into what actually look like Pokemon, and Nintendo immediately was like, no, this mod needs to not exist.
Because that's blatant.
Yes, and I think that's where the real questionable part of this is Nintendo might not actually have a leg to stand on, because while yes, everyone screamed Pokemon with guns, it's really, like you said, more like Ark with Pokemon. And, yes, they're throwing more or less legally distinct Pokeballs to catch these things. What you're doing with them is not what you do in Pokemon. And at a certain point, you can rip things off pretty heavily, and if it's not the same, if it's not those characters, a rip-off isn't illegal. So it's...
I think that depends very heavily on what exactly is being ripped off and to what degree.
And I think that's why when the statement came out with Nintendo basically saying, we are investigating this, and that's all they'll say. That's all we're going to hear until they either find something actionable, or they just have to say, yeah, they ripped off a bunch of our designs, but they changed them enough that we can't go to court about it.
Well, just based on my own interaction with all of this discussion, it seems like there's basically two camps here. There are the Nintendo faithful. How could they do this? Nintendo, why aren't you doing something? People. I'm not going to resort to using derogatory terms here. And then you have the fuck Nintendo. They shut down everything. Fuck them. This is what they get for handling the Pokemon franchise so poorly over the past 5 years, people. And the thing about this discussion is it has nothing to do with the quality of the game. And all of the publicity that Palworld has gotten because of that, I think, is probably a pretty large factor on why it sold so well to begin with. Because when I look at the actual quality of the game, it ain't it. It's just not that good.
Fair. Well, luckily, there are some games that are good. And I think we may have played some.
Are there, Neil?
Yeah. I think the good games exist.
Prove it.
Okay. Well, shit, I'm looking at the list of games I played. Hold on. No, I'm kidding.
Convinced.
I'm kidding.
Not convinced.
No, I heralded the new year of our Lord 2024, by going all the way back to 2012 and playing Dragon's Dogma.
Wow. Listen. Well, I did watch the state of play from PlayStation. Mm-hmm. Dragon's Dogma 2 was shown. Yep. We can say that this is you preparing for a new game.
That is a little bit of it, in fact. I owned Dragon's Dogma for over 5 years and said, I keep telling myself I should give it a real shot. Now, Dragon's Dogma does have a few things, pretty big things, that tend to be things I chafe against. One, it is definitely what one would call an open world game. They would. I saw you do a little squinty. No one else does, but I see it.
Okay.
It
I
is
mean, I
an
think that
open
you
world
are a
game.
very critical person when it comes to open worlds.
I am. And this has some not great things about the way the open world is made, but the general quest design and just like running around is fun enough that I'm kind of okay with it. And it's an older game, so it's not so big that I feel like I'm wasting, 30 minutes going nowhere.
Okay.
Um, but what's really striking me about it is the more I have played it, the more I have compared it to Skyrim because they came out in the same year.
Okay.
And Skyrim is, in a lot of ways, I think, kind of the de facto what people point to when they talk about what is an open world RPG. A lot of things, obviously, they were making Elder Scrolls games before Skyrim. Skyrim is an evolution of those, but that's the one that hit big, right? Just like everyone talks about Dark Souls, not Demon Souls.
I mean, I think the reason I mean, obviously I only speak for myself, but like I played Morrowind. Like that was my first Elder Scrolls game, and having played that, it made me excited for Oblivion, and having played that, it made me excited for Skyrim.
Mm,
So, I mean, I guess it depends like how old you are. Not
yeah.
to not to out myself too hard here,
Fair, fair.
um but yes, I mean if you were to like say what's the iconic game that defines an open world RPG, I think that Skyrim is an arguable case just based on how many people have played that game.
How many platforms it got ported to, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, these two games came out the same year. And, Bethesda games are famous for being a little bit janky, having weird stuff, and people overlook all that because they just love everything else about it. Dragon's Dogma also has some jank in a very different way. But the thing for me that is like the big reason I'm bringing this up at all is I look at these two games and I go like, what if Dragon's Dogma was the one that hit that year? And how would that have changed the trajectory of open world games? Because I'm having way more fun with Dragon's Dogma just because of how it actually plays compared to anything I've ever gotten out of Skyrim and most open worlds for the way that they design their worlds.
All right, Neil.
Mm-hmm.
You're telling me that Dragon's Dogma approaches the open world in a different way than Skyrim.
Mm-hmm.
Go.
All right. Number one, it doesn't, and maybe I'm getting this wrong with Skyrim, but I'm pretty sure this is a Bethesda thing. The world levels with you. That does not happen in Dragon's Dogma. In Dragon's Dogma, if you go to some fucking place that is way past where you should be, it's going to fucking punch you to the ground and take a shit on you, and it's great. Thank you. Thank you, Dragon's Dogma. Tell me, no, don't go here. There's nothing for you here yet. You're too weak. I like that. Makes me feel like I have a place, a direction to go.
Okay. You're one of
Number
those punishment-based direction people. You don't want to be rewarded. You want to be punished for going the wrong way. Okay.
Number two, just in general, they're filling you with tons of quests, but most of them don't matter, and they're very explicit with the ones that don't matter because they're just like, kill some dudes while you're running around, and you'll just get your experience. You don't have to like turn them in and stuff. So
Okay.
the actual quests that are like worth doing are quests that actually take you somewhere, give you a cutscene, give you something more, give you some characters.
So we'll call those main quests.
Not even all of them are main quests, though. That's the thing. There's the side quests are ones that you can progress past, and the game will say, "Hey, you can't go back and do this anymore," and that's good to me. Like I don't want a world that is the thing that always got me about Skyrim is It is a world filled with quests, and you can always do all of them. The entire world is literally just content for you to absorb. And because Dragon's Dogma will lock you out of things, it feels like not everything is just there for me to get it. They didn't just make everything and make sure that everyone can always experience all of it. And that feels good to me, because to me that makes the open world feel more alive. It makes the open world feel like things are progressing in it in a way that a lot of other open world design philosophy has moved in this direction of make a world, make it huge, make sure there's a ton to do, and make sure you can do all of it.
Wasn't that kind of a thing in Witcher? Like, you played the earlier Witcher game, yeah?
Yeah. I played Witcher 2, and I liked it way more than what I got through of Witcher 3.
And it's just like, oh, you have a decision to make, and it will lock out things, right?
Yeah, that okay. End of chapter 1, you make like a big decision that basically says like, hey, the entirety of chapter 2 is going to be like based in a different town, totally different quests. Like it is.
And you like that?
I like that.
How can I feel FOMO when I don't even have a choice to do the other thing?
Kind of. And like you can always go back, you can play again, you can do other choices and stuff, but like...
What if they made a game where you can't go back, Neil? Where when you make that decision, it's permanent.
That's life, man.
Well, life ain't a game, Neil. You'd be good to remember.
I don't know about that. I'm trying to make sure to have a little fun in it, so, you know, gotta treat it like
you ain't
a game.
Playing Neil's Dogma, okay?
Look.
This ain't no Neil Stranding.
Oh, God. At any rate, if anything, the biggest piece of Dragon's Dogma is really just the way it plays. A lot of the people that were behind Dragon's Dogma are people that were behind Monster Hunter games.
Oh, yeah?
And you can feel a little bit of that that approach to how animations and stuff are going to work, how weapons are going to feel. You can feel some of that in this game in a way that is pretty satisfying compared to what I think is really unfun and unengaging out of Bethesda games. So,
hey man,
that's a big part of it too.
If you think Skyrim is bad, man, Starfield just missed all of what was good about early Bethesda games. But that's a discussion for another time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Did we even talk about the announcement of the new Monster Hunter game?
Probably not, because I think that happened at the Game Awards, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think so. We basically just did our Game Awards. We didn't talk about, hey, numbered Monster Hunter 6, a.k.a. Monster Hunter Wilds is coming out soon-ish, next year.
Yep.
But
a.k.a. Dragon's Dogma 3?
I don't know about that one.
Okay.
But Dragon's
you said
Dogma,
it's the same people.
There is crossover. And I'm much more interested in Dragon's Dogma 2, having played some of Dragon's Dogma 1 now.
Hey, let me tell you, I was a lot more interested in the Wonka movie after I found it was by the same dude who did Paddington.
What? Are you serious?
So I get what you're saying. Have you seen Paddington?
No, but I just can't imagine those are the same person.
It's the same guy, same director.
Jesus. Okay.
I recommend both, honestly. I was charmed.
Okay, well.
You could say that Wonka is the Monster Hunter Wilds of Paddington's Dragon's Dogma.
I can't even parse that sentence.
You could, and I just did.
Well, speaking of Paddington Bear...
Speaking of Paddington,
there are some anthropomorphic animals in a game that you play.
Amazing. There's a couple anthropomorphic animals. I'm assuming you're talking about Pseudo-Regalia.
I am.
Yeah, so I was kind of like getting towards the end of 2023, and I had just finished talking about Void Stranger at length in our Best Games of 2023 podcast, aka the only other episode that exists of this particular iteration of our podcast. And I was like, man, I wonder what other games I might have missed that probably would have been really good to talk about on a Best Games of 2023 podcast. And it turned out there were a couple of really good games that probably should have been on that list. And one of them was Pseudo Regalia. So Pseudo Regalia is kind of like a Metroidvania platforming, almost like a Hollow Knight, but 3D sort of situation.
Okay.
N64 styled. I will say I was playing with my girlfriend watching, and she was getting sick with the camera whipping around. And me being the gamer that I am, I was unaffected. I like a whippy camera. But just a word of caution, all you who might be a little sensitive to your stomach, maybe not the game for you. But it certainly was the game for me, and here's why. We had been playing Celeste 64, which we will talk about, right?
Yes.
Celeste 64, fun little Matty Thorson game spin-off of Celeste, came out for free. Really hard to translate 2D movement to 3D fluidly. Like, that's the main thing I want to say about Celeste 64. Oh my god, Pseudo Regalia has the best 3D movement of any 3D platformer I've ever played.
Whoa, those are some big words.
That was a string of words that maybe weren't big, but were meaningful.
That's a powerful thing to say about a game.
Big words like platformer. But yeah, I mean, it has all the mainstays of what makes a platformer good. And that's like, really easy way to like tell where you are in 3D space. Like, that is my main problem with Celeste 64. And they even give you a little weird vertical tracker in that game. But Pseudo Regalia just feels good. And the movement, Neil. Oh my goodness. Like, this is a 2-sitting game. Like, you'll get through this game really quick. But it does movement. Like, you got the coyote time. We talk about coyote time maybe before when we talked about Celeste, but it's called coyote time because it's after Wile E. Coyote. It's the idea that you run off of a platform and you kind of have a little bit of time to react where you can still jump even though you're not really over a platform. Mm-hmm. And boy, can you abuse that. Like, I was sequence breaking this game without knowing it. Just because the movement was weirdly familiar, even though I had never played a game quite like it. Like, there's just an intuitiveness once you have certain abilities to kind of get an idea of, like, how momentum works. Like, there's bunny hopping in this, there's slide dashing, there's, like, the Hollow Knight hit an enemy on the head, bonk, and launch yourself up a little bit situation. Everything that I like about a good platformer is there. And it also has a really slapping MIDI soundtrack to complement the Nintendo 64 graphics. Story, I don't know if there is like a more meaningful story there. I am not actually done with it. I am at the very end, and I have just been watching speedrun tutorials on like how to do advanced movement. And it's very like Celeste in that way, in that you always have access essentially to all these very like more high-end, very frame perfect movements. They're like available like really early on, but unless you really know about them or like you do it by accident and like sit there and try and grind out how you did it, you kind of won't know what's actually going on there. And once I watched some of these videos, I was like, holy crap, like you don't need most of what you get as Metroidvania abilities in this game to go wherever you want. And that's cool. And I know you want open world games that punish you and tell you, no, don't go this way. But I like my platformers the opposite, Neil. I want my platformers to give me all the tools to do things I'm not supposed to do and then let me do them.
Well, I was gonna say I watched 2 relatively short videos of this game. And the thing that struck me in the little bit I saw was it looked so much like a game that, like you said, N64 era. It
Yeah,
looks
they
like a
nail it.
game that kind of went like, hey, you know how in those games there was usually like some air attack or something you could do, and if you did it against a wall in a certain angle, it would like let you jump up in a weird way to break things? The game looks like it took that and said, what if we made that what you are trying to do?
Oh, Neil, you don't know the half of it.
I
Like
obviously not with how you
it
just described it, but like that's
it
even
it
how the video
feels
I saw looked, and I was just like, oh,
right.
weird. Okay.
Right. So it's on the surface it's like this looks like a Nintendo 64 game where you're doing things you're not supposed to. But beneath that surface, it's a Nintendo 64 game where you're doing things you're not supposed to that you're not supposed to looking like you're supposed to. Does that make sense?
Only the very littlest bit. It's like a
Okay.
cloud forming above my head, trying to pierce.
Well, if you're even marginally curious, I highly recommend playing that game. It is not expensive. It
Hmm.
is not long, and it just feels good. And I really hope that they make more of these.
Okay. Well, having just played Celeste 64, and you're saying this controls way better, uh,
Well, let's talk about Celeste 64 now. Let's
I'd
talk a
be a
little bit
little
about
interested.
that.
Yeah, Celeste 64, Fragments of the Mountain.
First of all, free game. Okay,
Free game.
whatever complaints we have are gonna have to be minimized because it's free. Like,
Free game.
what kind of a ween do I have to be to complain about like the fine tuning of a free game? Come on.
Free game. Very true.
Having said that, here's my complaints.
Having said that, it is weird to play. I definitely struggled with the controls myself as well.
Yeah, I feel like there's the way that the camera orients behind Maddie. It makes it so that it's hard to actually go a cardinal direction easily. Like there's a
Mm,
lot of those bonus levels where you get the cassette tape and it takes you to the
yeah.
Mario Sunshine-esque parody, and then you like the camera will orient itself or try to behind your character, but it's never really like perfect. And since your directions are based off the camera, it also means that your movement is going to be imperfect.
Yeah. The piece that I had with that game was it felt like no matter what camera angle I was getting, it never quite gave me everything I needed somehow, which I don't recall happening in a lot of other 3D platformers I've played. Um,
Yeah, I think that like when you're playing Celeste, like the actual 2D Celeste game, like when you are gauging distance for like how far Maddie's dash is,
mhm.
or Madeline's dash, like it's easy to look at the screen and be like, that's how far I'm going to go. But when you are floating in a void where there are
Way
some
harder.
platforms and like
Way harder.
you're like floating a nebulous distance above everything and you're hitting that dash and you're not sure if you overshot it until you've already overshot it, and like there's not a lot of like ability to right that momentum. Like Madeline throws herself. Like
Yeah.
you can use a lot of the techniques from 2D Celeste. Like you can do wave dashes. You can
Hmm.
launch yourself across a level pretty easily. It's just trying to figure out where you're going to land. That's the hard part. And that's
Yeah.
what I definitely struggled with. To the point that I kind of backed out of some bonus levels, which is so not like what I would do with the original Celeste. Like I'd just grind that out and be like, that's my fault.
Yeah.
But
I did grind it out. There was one bonus level involving jumping on a bunch of squares. I don't know if that's
that
one of the ones you
disappear,
backed out of.
that disappear, Neil.
Yes.
I backed out of that. There's the one strawberry at the beginning that's like across a gap.
I
Is that the one, Neil?
I cheesed that one.
Is that the one, Neil?
So I got all of them.
You got
I
all of them.
grinded it
Okay.
out.
Well, good for
But
you.
that one bonus one, the disappearing platforms bonus one, was probably like 90 out of my 130 or so deaths.
Bro, it felt
Like
so assy.
that one in particular is really rough. And I know this isn't like a whole game they're making out of it. It's actually more like a really small project. If you when you kind of get to the top, they tell you like the credits are vocalized and going like, "Hey, this was made like kinda in about a week." Which means obviously they didn't do a lot of cleaning it up
Fine
to make
tuning.
it, yeah, fine tuning and cleaning it up. There are things they could do to make it feel and the camera maybe work a little bit different in a way that would make it feel better to me. Um, but I had a lot of fun with it, and it was interesting to see them talk about like revisiting Celeste a little bit because for people like us who I think have paid a bit of attention to the developer, um, Celeste came out, it was huge, and in more than one way helped change their life. Kind of everybody involved in that project, their life was changed around it, and the director especially. Uh, this is kind of, and you can tell bits of this game are a reflection of thinking back on what Celeste was and where they were in life at that time, which is way more than I expected to get out of an hour and a half with a fucking silly little fan project, kinda, you know?
Okay, well, I didn't. Just full disclosure, I didn't get to the sentimental part of the Celeste 64 game.
Oh, fair. Fair.
I got to the part where there's platforms placed in a void and they disappear when you jump on them. That's what I took away from this game. So, but
Okay.
maybe I should go back and give it another check. But yeah, I mean, obviously Celeste was a very heartfelt, meaningful game for a lot of people, both when it first came out and then later as the narrative became more clear, not only to the people who had played it, but to the creator themselves. What I find curious is that we have Celeste 64 now, right? And you say that they made it in a week, basically?
Yeah, that's what they say is like it wasn't just the one person.
Right.
It was like a small bit of the team.
Sure, sure.
Even the composer came back and did like 2 songs for this game, basically, and like it's a fun little project.
Okay. So they had announced their next game. That's Earthblade, right?
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
Earthblade has so much visual DNA of Celeste.
Mm-hmm.
So to see them go off and do like this 3D project, that's interesting, because I kind of wonder like if they weren't trying to, recapture the feeling of what Celeste was, which I can't blame them for because Celeste was an amazing game. What might their next game look like? If this is in their ability, I would like to see a more fine-tuned 3D game from them. Because as much as I didn't really find the control satisfying, I did see the potential in this. The idea of, oh, hey, and maybe this is also because I was playing Pseudo Regalia at the time, but, I can imagine a game like Celeste in 3D that really works.
Yeah, me too. I think
It just maybe...
it would need to be a different game, but you and I grew up on 3D platformers. It's not hard to imagine it working.
Yeah.
And it's not hard to imagine those developers figuring out how to make it work, given more than a week to do it.
That'd be good.
That's kind of the thing, is like, I played Celeste 64, and there's definitely rough stuff about it, but the understanding for me that like, oh, this was made in like a week, it's basically a game jam game.
Yeah.
And looking at it that way, like,
I mean,
for what a lot of game jam games are, this is fucking incredible.
Hey man, game jams are the birthplaces of a lot of great indie games.
Yeah. So true.
So what else? What else do we have to talk about? We're like getting pretty close to an hour here
already.
Well,
I mean, you did just talk about indie games, and it would be remiss of me not to bring up the indie game of the year according to Jeff Keighley, Dave the Diver.
Dave the Diver. Oh, Jeff Keighley said that was his indie game of the year?
When
or
it
was
got...
that the one that they picked?
I can't fully remember. I just remember there being when the indie game category came out, Dave the Diver being there was like everybody blowing up about it because the developers themselves were like, we're not indie. Uh,
Yeah. So I mean, Mint is it Mint Jelly is the name of the company that makes Dave the Diver. Let me look that up really quick. Let's see. Oh, Mint Rocket. Developer is Mint Rocket. Who else?
oh,
What else has
okay.
Mint Rocket made? Like, what other games have you made? Wake Runners, Knock One, Last Paradise. I haven't heard of either of these games,
Yeah.
but they work under the blanket, or the umbrella, I should say, of Nexon. Ever
Hmm.
hear of Nexon, Neil?
Yeah, because I've heard of Dave the Diver.
Well, you know what else Nexon has published?
Tell me.
Maple Story.
Oh, I never played
And
Maple Story. Well, okay, that's not true. I played Maple Story for a half hour at your house in like 2009.
did you? Well, I don't remember playing Maple Story.
I think Tim was playing it or something,
Oh, that yeah, I can
and was
imagine
like,
Tim
"Check it
playing
out," and I
Maple
was like,
Story.
"All right," and then I was like, "No, I'm not gonna download this."
Yeah, that's kind of like any like after the year 2010, watching someone play Maple Story was like, oh, you're still playing that? That's interesting. Um, but we're not talking about Maple Story. We're talking about Dave the Diver, which I guess isn't an indie game. I'm not sure like how that's classified, but Dave the Diver is a game about diving and the many facets in which that like becomes like important. Like, okay, so you start off, you have this buddy who calls you and he's like, "Hey, we're starting a business venture at the Blue Hole, which is an actual place, but I think this is like a fictionalized version thereof, where they set up like a sushi place on the edge of it, and they're like, "Hey, the Blue Hole, like fish from all over the world inexplicably exist here." So we want you to dive, and we're gonna make exotic sushi, and it's gonna be really profitable. And Dave's like, okay, I guess I'll do that. And then as you're doing this, many other plot beats start to unfold. Other people start arriving at the blue hole, and you start diving for all sorts of reasons.
Hmm.
But the crux of the game is that you are diving. Um, there is kind of a B side to the game, which is basically like a restaurant management thing, where
Okay.
like during the day you dive. Like you have the morning and afternoon you can do two dives, and then at the evening you are working at the sushi place. And at the sushi place you basically act as a server and a manager kind of de facto, where you start out where it's the only systems are like you pick which fish are going to be made into sushi, but then like you later unlock systems where like you develop new meals, you can hire more staff for the restaurant. And one thing I do want to praise is that the pacing for unlocking different systems is very good. Like I never felt bored, but I also never felt overwhelmed. And that's a
Okay.
very delicate balance for games. Like I don't know many games that actually do it very well. I mean, at least like 2015, 2016, one of the biggest memes was like tutorials, right? Over tutorialization in games. And, you know, they really grated on a lot of people, especially people who had been playing games for a long time.
Hmm.
And Dave the Diver feels good in that way because just the way that they compartmentalize a lot of the tutorials feels like it's kind of part of plot beats. So there's good reason to want to engage with everything. Um, and you also do need to like complete objectives across the different enterprises that involve your diving in order to progress the story. And there is a story. Um, so I'm only in chapter two. There is a
Oh, okay.
prologue, chapter one. I'm like at the tail end of chapter two.
I've heard it's a longer game than people expect. So,
Yeah, yeah, I get the feeling that it's longer.
okay.
Um, but you know, it's the core gameplay is you have basically four stats. You have the stat of your harpoon gun, the stat of your dive suit, the stat of your oxygen tanks, and the stat of your carrying capacity. And the interaction of those systems are basically you need to catch a lot of fish in order to supply the restaurant. Um, but also you're trying to juggle like completing all like these objectives for like researchers or archaeologists, environmentalists, people who just want to have a big collection of fish.
So that's all in the diving part, not the management part, then, right?
Right. So there's at least as far as I can tell, there's two sides. There's the diving part and the restaurant part. Maybe there's more down the road. I don't know. But the diving is basically you fund your dives using the money, your share of the take from the restaurant, and you can buy upgrades, and it feels good. It's a kind of an arcade game. It is kind of like a pseudo roguelite in the sense that they explain that the topology of the blue hole changes all the time, so every dive is kind of different.
Okay.
Like it's a kind of like a weird, mysterious thing that I have a feeling is going to have some sort of dark turn. The game is largely comedic and cartoony, but also it's not afraid of showing blood, and there's also like some like low key horror stings. So I don't know what I'm getting in for. I do also know that they did a crossover with Dredge, which is very explicitly a horror fishing game. So
I did not know about that crossover. Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
But yeah,
Interesting.
it's a very good game. Not really like blowing my socks off or anything, but it feels good to play, and it is a very good game for the Steam Deck.
Ah,
Which I do have, and I
that's
have
right.
5 minutes to talk about.
That's right. You have a Steam Deck now.
I do have a Steam Deck. I have been playing most of the games that I've been playing recently on the Steam Deck. That includes games like Tiny Rogue, Dave the Diver, Pseudo Regalia. But it's by no means like you don't have to only play indie or classic games on this thing. It's surprisingly good at handling AAA titles. Like, you can play Cyberpunk on it. I played a little Death Stranding on it. I might play a little more Death Stranding on it, because after watching the state of play and seeing Death Stranding 2 on the beach, I feel like maybe there was actually some really interesting, weird story going on there.
I was
Or
gonna
maybe
say, didn't you
Kojima.
like bounce the fuck off of Death
I
Stranding?
bounced, I bounced pretty hard off Death Stranding. Not
Okay.
for lack of love for what it was trying to do, but for the monotony of what it was doing. And you can go back to the Part-Time Gamers podcast episode about Death Stranding for that one. But, we have a trailer, a long-form trailer that definitely suits Hideo Kojima in his cinematic gloriousness for Death Stranding 2 on the beach, which is the real name, by the way. And yeah, I don't know if you watched the state of play, but boy, is that like everything that happens in that trailer doesn't somehow spoil anything from the first game. Like, I have no idea what's going on in that trailer. But it does set it up to make me feel like maybe I'm missing out on something. And maybe that's Kojima trickery. I don't know.
You don't think Clown Guy with electric blasting guitar that he turns into a literal laser axe is not spoiling the first game?
Like, there's a point where I look at what Kojima does and like, this guy takes his shit way too seriously. And then there's a point where you see the guy with the guitar that he plays and it kills people, and you're like, Kojima's actually kind of a fun guy, isn't he?
The thing because I did watch the state of play. The thing that actually drove me crazy about that fucking trailer was that fucking like 12 frames per second puppet. What the fuck is going on?
Well, hey, listen, Neil. Pseudo Regalia has the same thing going on with Sybil. Sybil is the main character, and she is at a different frame rate than other things.
Yeah, but Sybil's not in a game that otherwise looks like it's 60
it's not
frames
Death Stranding
locked,
64.
like trying to look super nice and like
Yeah. We're not playing Death Stranding for Nintendo 64. We're playing Death Stranding for whatever the fuck system we're doing now. But yeah, I mean, it's that kind of stuff, that visual intrigue that's like, wait, what is going on there? Will it be explained? Probably not. But actually, with it being Kojima, probably yes, but it won't be a satisfying explanation.
Yeah, we'll find out that we'll find out the puppet's name is Low Frame Rate Man, and then everything will be explained on how he exists.
Sure.
What you're saying? Die Hard Man is a good fucking name for that's a real one. Die Hard Man is a real one.
Yeah, I mean, literally Metal Gear Solid 5, the Phantom Pain had a character named the Man on Fire, and he was a man who was on fire.
The guy who's on fire. So yeah, the puppet is gonna be named Low Frame Rate Man or some shit.
Because
he's just a low frame rate guy.
He's gonna be called V-Sync.
Fucking Kojima, what the hell?
Screen terror, but it's spelled like the word terror, like frightening.
Oh boy. Yeah, State of Play happened. You know, I still don't have a PlayStation, and Kojima games don't do it for me the way they do for you.
Neil, listen, we're in the era where PlayStation's exclusives no longer are actually exclusives.
True, but they do come to PC like 2 or 3 years late.
Yeah, you're doing a preview of what's going to be on PC in 3 years.
That's fair, fair.
Since these games aren't going to be out for another year, after they release, 2 years later, they're going to be on PC.
Mm-hmm.
We got God of War. We got Spider-Man.
We do. We did.
We got all the big ones.
And I know Microsoft did a developer backyard thing where they finally put out some dates for, what was it? The Senua game that we've been seeing for like 7 years or something.
Oh, yeah.
They have a date for that coming up in May, and they talked about that game a bunch.
The date announcement. Is it actually a date announcement?
No. Maybe? Because it was part of like a, hey, here's like 5 games that we have coming.
Yeah, I might have seen that. I don't know.
It was the same event where they like or type of video that they put out when they like shadow dropped or whatever the fuck we call stuff Hi-Fi Rush last year. It was that kind of a video, but it had the Senua one in there. It had I think it was Avowed, I think is the name of it. Like action
Disavowed?
An action RPG of some kind, like first person action RPG that Yeah, I don't remember anything blowing me away other than like, hey, they finally have a date for Senua, which is a game I'm looking forward to, but Lord knows when I'll get to. I like that first game, so
still haven't played it. It looks like it's a pretty interesting thing.
Well, luckily, I should be able to play it, because I should be getting a new computer soon.
Yeah, and then you can play Dragon's Dogma 2.
Yeah. And Alan Wake 2. And a bunch of other things that I missed.
I don't know, man. I'm still basking in 2023's games. Like, that was a good year for gaming.
I really do need to play a few more of them.
Yeah,
and
man,
I have some on my short list.
Stranger.
I know, Void Stranger, it's on my short list. I promise.
Well, okay. You gotta fit something in between Dragon's Dogma and Dragon's Dogma 2.
Yeah.
You can't just go straight to Dogma.
It's gonna be Alan Wake 2.
Dogma.
I'm not. It'll be Alan Wake 2. Maybe some other shit. But yes. Was there anything else from the State of Play that really caught your eye?
I mean, they're really pushing the Silent Hill stuff, right? And I mean, I'm living in a post-Konami video game world. And so when Konami decides, oh, you know what, let's fucking do it, I'm like full of doubt. I have nothing but doubt for Konami. Apparently they were like doing like a not a TV series, but like an interactive film thing with Silent Hill. I don't know what it was called. I've never really followed Silent Hill that closely, but I know that they released like a short video game for free on PlayStation, which was announced on State of Play. It came out same day.
It's something about a message, like the last message or something.
The point is, there's a lot of Silent Hill coming.
Yes.
What I will say is that they showed a trailer for Silent Hill 2's remake. right?
Yes.
And boy, was that just the main character walloping a bunch of monsters with a bat.
It sure was a, hey, maybe we improved the combat. And it's like,
Well, it feels
cool?
like you completely missed the point of what Silent Hill's supposed to be.
Exactly. That's why
It's not a monster walloping simulator,
no,
which is what you made it seem like.
and Silent Hill 2 is also like the entire game is so incredibly about the vibes and the
Immaculate Silent Hill vibes.
well, I was gonna say the vibes and the frankly kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Caring game in a way. Like it
Caring.
Silent Hill 2 is fucking wild, dude. It is empathetic. I think that's the word I'm looking for. It is a wildly empathetic game. And to be advertising it with the like, hey, did you know you can fight the monsters in this is really feels like it's missing
Early Resident
everything
Evil
that is good about Silent Hill.
shrieking. Early Resident Evil fans shrieking at what they're doing to Silent Hill now.
Yeah.
They're Resident Evil 4ing it.
Worse. So much worse.
Though it's way worse if you do it to Silent Hill because Resident Evil 4 was, it changed how that game played, but that series was always campy. But when you take, like you said, this very empathetic game, a story that is very personal, at least within the character's purview, and you turn it into like here's a bunch of shots of him hitting monsters with a bat. It's like, I don't have faith that you understand the franchise that you're trying to sell to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that comes from someone who's not even that big of a Silent Hill fan. Like, I've watched my video essays.
Mm-hmm.
I have a level of understanding that sadly feels stronger than what Konami has.
Yeah, Konami and Blooper Team. Don't forget the Blooper Team is behind it too.
And Blooper Team, right.
Yeah.
What else have they done?
Did
they do the Demon Souls?
No, they did that Blair Witch one recently-ish, a few years back. They did
the one with the dog?
Layers of Fear.
Oh,
Layers of Fear
is all right.
The first one is okay, but it's also not great. And it feels like every one of them that I've played since then has kind of been going the wrong direction, I guess, or I guess in a generic in a way direction, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like it feels like they figured out, hey, people like that we are okay at this horror stuff, but we're not actually that good at it.
Well, I think Layers of Fear was clever, and it had a lot of great sets, a lot of good visual dressing. The story wasn't there. I don't think that there was anything particularly striking about the story for Layers of Fear. But I would say that there's striking things about the stories from Silent Hill. So
now I'm remembering. They were the ones behind The Medium.
The Medium.
Which
was that was that the one where like the dude gets like knocked out of his body or whatever? And
I don't think so. That was like a lady one. That's the one that probably landed them Silent Hill, because it was like a lady and something about like seeing two different visions of the world. Like one half of her sight could see the world a different way or something. I never ended up playing that game, but that game has been described by some people I've seen as the worst game they played this decade.
And that landed them Silent Hill, huh?
Uh-huh. Seems like it.
Wow.
So, Konami, I don't think it's... I'm worried, is what I'm saying.
I would say maybe make your peace with the franchise if you love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, you know what? I love to be wrong, especially in situations like this. Still, it is Konami, so... There's always pachinko for Silent Hill.
Hooray!
Bro, they're remaking Metal Gear Solid 3 again.
Again. I mean, they're also remaking fucking... I don't think we talked about it. Fucking Last of Us Part 2. remake.
Yeah, that game's not old enough to justify a remake.
That game is already on the system. It
Wasn't already remastered?
It was already getting the like from PS4 to PS5 bump.
Right,
and now they're just doing it as a
remastered.
PS5 only. And it's like, you see those fucking side-by-side shots, it does not look different in 90% of it. Like, maybe the shadows look a little bit better, and that's fucking it.
But here's the thing, Neil. There are ravenous fans of that franchise.
I'm clenching my fists in anger.
You're Arthur meming.
I'm
in
Arthur
2024.
I'm Arthur meming because holy shit, the like everything is just getting remade all the time thing, like that has been something we've been complaining about for at least 5 years.
Why do you think
and
I'm
it feels
playing
like it's just
games
getting worse?
Like Void Stranger and Pseudo Regalia?
I hear you.
Because I have no faith in big AAA companies any longer. There's nothing there for me.
I think that's the right choice. To me, if the game came out on like PS3, Xbox 360 era, and you want to do a remake now, fine, I get it. But holy shit, anything newer than that, come the fuck on.
Like, the last remake that I played was the Odin Sphere remake from PlayStation 2 to PlayStation 3. And they changed that game completely.
Hold on. You played that more recently than Resident Evil 4?
What do you mean?
The remake of Resident Evil 4?
I played the remake of Resident Evil. Yeah, I played that more recently on my Steam Deck.
Yeah, okay. You were like, oh, the last remake I played. I was like, whoa.
Hey, whoa, but Resident Evil 4 was a good remake, too.
Yeah, I'm not saying it wasn't. Anyway.
Good.
Good. We should get on out of here. It's getting late.
Sun's coming down.
I gotta let the liquids out of my body. Because I drank way too much liquids.
I never let the liquids out of my body.
That seems like a mistake. How are you not just, like, exploding?
Regulating my pressure. It's really difficult, but
I feel like I gotta go regulate some pressure.
There you go.
Oh boy.
You gotta do that if you've been diving.
Thank you for
you can't
listening,
just come
everybody.
straight up.
We'll see you again soon. Well, you'll hear us again soon.
Relatively.
Yes.
Give me a proper outro here, Neil.
The proper outro is recorded already. It's got like, hey, where you can find us, all that stuff.
I don't like that it's pre-recorded.
But it makes it sound professional. Are we not pseudo-professionals here?
No, we're not. We're not gonna even pretend.
Look, I got my regalia on so that I can look like a fancy lad. Yeah, you see what I did there? I see that unhappy...
When you're cutting things out, you can cut that one out too.
Oh! Ouch. Audio Games is hosted and produced by Matthew Lane and Neil Jimenez. Our theme music is Recharging by Gooset. If you'd like to reach out to us, please email us at audiogamespodcast@gmail.com. Oh my god. Matt, how's the storm?
Storm...
You're down in California
segue.
and I've heard some nightmares already.
It's the perfect segue for talking about not having an internet connection. But thankfully, I was able to dodge most of the issues involving that. I am a bike commuter, though. And that's not fun. A lot of use of Walmart bags over the backpack to prevent it from getting wet mid-transit. No. But, you know, we out here with our sensibilities of crafting in all games from 2020 onward. We know how to throw a bag over a different bag.